It's now the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I usually share two books that we love and we think that you should read right now. But this week we have something special in the works, don't we, Brad?
Special edition show coming at you right now. Jen and I are going to dive into pumpkin painting. It's
Woo!
autumn, it's that time of year. But we're not just talking any type of pumpkin painting or pumpkin decorating, because this is a show about how much we love books and reading. So we are going to try our hand at hashtag literacy o lanterns. Did I say that right, Jen?
Perfect. It's perfect. I am so excited about it. I love it. Bring it in, bring it in. And Brad, you and I joke all the time about how this show is never planned. We've only planned one other show. This is Mark's number two. I feel like we're setting a trend that I'm real excited about.
Yeah, we did we had to touch base on this. So what we think we're going to deliver for you, and we recognize actually we might have some students and artists and readers watching this in addition to teachers this time. We want to teach you kind of our process for how we approach creating a literacy lantern, also known as a pumpkin that resembles a book character or a book cover, and then just share a few of some designs that we're either in the process of creating or that we have created. And then we'll do a segue over to teachers who are connected to social media, or sometimes older students. We'll let you know where we're going to be revealing some of our literacy lanterns in the coming days and weeks, so you can actually see our finished products. Does that sound like a
Yes.
plan?
Yes. And what I think
All
is
right.
important for our audience of three people to know is that Brad is an expert at this. I went back and was looking at your Literacy O Lantern archives. You've been doing this for a number of years. I'm a complete novice. So you're going to get the points of views and tips from someone who really knows what they're doing and someone who's just figured a few things out from doing it once. So if I can do
Uh,
it, anyone can.
Yep, and Jen is amazing, so she can do really anything. So here's like just how we want to start. In order to create a literacy lantern, I mean, you need a pumpkin, and I was thinking about this. You could probably even make do with a construction paper sheet in your classroom, right? Right? I mean, you don't really need a real pumpkin if you don't have one or have access to them at school. But the trick I've learned over the years, and I've probably done 50 or more of these things, is like a permanent marker is it makes the world go round, because if you trace the outline of your book character that you choose and just color in the lines, it turns
Mhm.
out way better than it should. Like it actually looks really, really cool. So I'll give you an example of what I do each year. I choose my favorite book characters or books for the year. Sometimes I'll print them out, but you can just use a regular book. So in this case, one of my favorite, well, actually two book combos, Front Desk
Mhm.
and then the sequel, Three Keys. The main character, Mia, I think you say her name, Mia.
Mhm.
That's her. And then I just traced a pumpkin around it just to kind of plan how I wanted to do this. And then instead of going big and bold with like my big permanent marker right away, like that's not a good thing to do. I always start with a thinner marker. It could be permanent, could be pencil, could be pen. And I just trace a practice of what I think I'm going to do with my character, because then if I
Yes.
don't like a line, I can redo it. I can paint over it. It doesn't matter. The other thing I'm going to say is sometimes teachers and principals need a little extra help and clues on the artwork. So you'll notice instead of me just doing the main character, Mia, because if I were to
Uh-huh.
do a guessing game with Jen, she might not know who I was trying to do. I added a little clue. You'll notice that a lot of the setting from the books takes place at Mia's family hotel, the Cal Vista. So I added that clue in the background there.
I love it.
Yeah, and then I changed the lettering is a big part of the storyline, but I changed it to just something that reminded me of the story. All are welcome.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that's step one, and I'll just go into what I typically do. And Jen, you've probably invented a different and better way to do this, but here what I do then is I go over my thin lines, and I won't do this all in front of you. I'll just show you kind of quickly how it turns out. So once I like what I have down from my practice lines,
Mhm.
I make it much thicker. So now you can obviously see that. And I would do her whole face in my hotel time. And then I, as an adult, use acrylic paints. I could see
Yeah.
kiddos and students using something different, like maybe tempera paints in class. These are permanent. So if you're an educator and you choose to use acrylic, like probably a good idea to have an art smock on, or newspaper things down. But then you just color it in like a paint by number,
Mm-hmm.
let it dry. I usually, Jen, wait in between colors. So if I'm switching, from whatever red to black, I'll if the paint is touching one another, I give it a little time. I either go to a different pumpkin or I go read a book or something. When it's dry, I'll come back to it. But then the biggest takeaway that I have is after you have it all painted, you go over it again with permanent marker, and that'll touch it up and make it look super ultra clean. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really the process in a nutshell. So is that close to what you followed, or did you invent your own path and trail?
No, I think I followed the same path. I just added some training wheels because I was very nervous. Now, I'm not going
Mhm.
to show mine now. I'm going to
Okay.
reveal them at the hashtag after the show airs so I can be the first one to reveal and get this party started. But two things that I just want to add to what you said is that my pumpkins required a background, so
Mm,
I painted a solid color in the background first, or
mhm,
kind of a mix of a color. And I let that dry overnight. So that was the first thing, is if I think for me doing the background, it was important to let that dry overnight. But
mhm,
then, because I was so nervous about messing up, I don't have the confidence in my artistic talents that Brad does after years of doing this, that I actually started with a pencil. So I drafted my drawings with a pencil first, so that way, if I messed up, it felt very low risk to me. Like, it
mhm,
felt like this was, if I mess up, it's no big deal because I can either erase this off of the color, or I can paint over it very easily. Now, the other thing I will say too is that I used a washable paint. I did
mm.
not use, because again, super nervous. Like, these were training wheels for me. And my paint required a couple of coats then.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So, if you're doing a washable paint like I did, you may find that you have to go back and redo some parts. The other thing I would say too, I think you hit on it, Brad, is that I learned early on, is that less is more when it comes to the paint. You don't need big
Mhm,
globs of it.
mhm,
And just doing tiny little sections at a time made me feel really more comfortable with the whole process. But I was
mhm.
really excited about it. Now my husband did one and I did one. I can't wait to share them. But now I feel I could start my own like literacy lantern business. Like, I feel very excited about the final product. So if I can do it, y'all, anybody can.
It is so fun. And the beauty is, although it takes a little bit of time to decorate a pumpkin, the conversation that can happen while you're painting.
Yes.
So when I do these at
Mm-hmm.
home, just me talking to my kids and even
Yep.
choosing the character and talking about books and
Yes.
debating, that's fun too. Jen, you talked about backgrounds. So I'm going to
Yes.
share. Um, I was talking to our media specialist and then also our good friend Julie Kirchner about like what's a graphic novel kids are gobbling up these days, because I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make
Mm-hmm.
sure have that format this year. So they of course said, well, here's one that you should consider
Yes.
painting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then I was even practicing like how I might draw the
Yes.
character. But what Jen said about the blue background, it actually looks really cool. This is a bigger pumpkin.
Yeah. 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 That's what we did.
It
Yeah.
has a really cool effect. So you can see I laid the groundwork, and I'll
Yes.
now that this is dry, I'll go in. This one, I don't usually do the title, but I think it'll look cool, and I want to challenge myself to put the title next to
Mm-hmm.
the character
Mm-hmm.
on this one. And I'll share one other one that I started the background on. And the whole reason to do a background, for me at least, is it's like if it's an iconic background that cues people in right away, like maybe
Right.
the book Wonder, people like associate that color background with the book. But here's an example of that. What
Yeah.
new kid was the first book in this
Mhm.
series, for lack of a better
Yeah,
word. So on this one, I thought, okay, this is pretty iconic. You got the red on one side, you got the white on the other. So I started this. I'm not done yet, but I got the red
yeah,
on one side. My plan is to have a sliver of white on the other, and then I'll just put
yeah.
the character um, Reed, I think his name is, if I'm remembering right here in the middle. So again,
Mhm.
just different ways to represent the book in a way that might clue people in. So you're giving them a couple nuggets either from the plot or the art or the design.
Brad, I am watching you reveal some of your books here, and I have to tell you that two of the books that you have chosen were on my short list of ones
Really?
to do, and I'm so glad we didn't duplicate now because again, Brad hasn't seen my pumpkins. They're behind me right now, but they're turned around so you can't see the pictures on the other side. So I didn't know today until today, just now, what you were doing. And I've just been like, whoo, I'm glad I didn't do that one. Whoo, I'm
But
glad
it's
I didn't do
fun.
that
I
one.
gotta say, our
Yes.
our whole third grade, so you're talking more than 100 kids
Mhm.
each year, they do their own, and it's fun
Yes,
to see
it
like a bunch of
is.
kids who choose because they're always so creative and different. It's never
Yes.
about whose is better. It's just about the ideas and the passion and the elements of the story that they represent on their pumpkin. I'll share another one. I usually do 6 a year in case anyone was wondering, and I try to not just I try to get a little creative on what I paint them on, partly because
Yeah.
it's just fun and interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Some year I'll try to choose characters that fit the shape. Like I think I did Geronimo Stilton one year on a gourd like this,
Yeah.
just because the
Yeah.
nose or the snout fit.
Oh, and last year you did that epic one for Coyote Sunrise that was
Oh,
on
yeah.
that one. I mean, that should be if there's an Oscar for literacy o' lanterns, that one right there is the winner.
Well,
Um,
If there's an Oscar for books, that book would be a winner. But another one of my favorite books I read this year was Ink, and the
mhm.
cover of Ink, for anyone who's read it or even held it, is so iconic. I mean, it
Yeah.
is stunning and vivid and draws you in, and it's kind of a book, kind of sort of loosely about um, tattoos, although you should read it because that's not really telling the whole story.
Oh,
So I thought, how perfect is that? I mean, you could tattoo a pumpkin with ink. So
yeah.
this one I actually did want to do the title. I don't usually do the title, like I said,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
then the cool thing for really for students and artists and readers listening, you don't have to do an identical cover remix. You can invent your own and just make your own meaning. So what I did was I looked at elements from the cover, like a crow is a big part of the story. So I thought, you know
Yeah.
what? Instead of trying to duplicate it, I'm just going to do it meaningful to me. So this is just my planning, my start. I haven't
I
even locked
love
it
it.
in, but I made the crow huge. I just made some
Mhm.
extra decorations. So in the end, I'm hoping, like when I
Yeah.
post this to hashtag literacy of lanterns on Twitter and on Instagram, I'm hoping it turns out to look like a pumpkin that was maybe professionally tattooed, just
Yeah.
like the book Ink.
I love it. There's so many different ways to interpret it. And even we found that to be true. In David and I did two very different books, and the pumpkins turned out very differently because the covers were so different and unique. And I just love that.
Mm.
And also to piggyback on something else you said, the whole time we were talking about the books, like the whole
Yes.
time we found ourselves just chatting about because David hadn't read the book I decided to do. And so he was like, well, what's that book about? And so I started to tell him, and then he wanted to read it, and so on and so forth. I mean,
Mm.
it really does help to spread that joy of reading because nothing gets you more excited about a book than hearing someone else talk about it and share their passion for it.
And it is a neat way, like you mentioned Coyote Sunrise, and I wept when
Hmm.
that book was over because it was so good. But it is a neat way to get back and connected to it and continue like that relationship with the
Yeah.
characters. My buddy of mine did with his staff, principal friend with his staff. He had them just as part of a staff meeting paint literacy
Hmm.
lanterns and then share, and I think he said he had everyone do it because he said sometimes we ask kiddos to do things they're uncomfortable with.
Hmm.
So even if you think you're not an artist yet, I want you to
Yeah.
try. I
Yeah.
did it with our team here, with our staff, and I approached it just a teeny bit different. I invited them to try, and if they were more comfortable just kind of socializing, hanging out while others painted,
Hmm.
that's cool too. And we probably had 9 out of 10, 90% of staff do the painting, but the
Yeah.
10% who didn't, they were dialed in, and actually some came up to me afterwards and said, thanks for making that a choice. I loved being there,
Yeah.
loved being part of it, and I got a lot out of it. Um, and thank you. So anyway, for any principals or PD
Love it.
planners out there who are looking for a meaningful activity in this time where wellness is still super important, maybe even more important, like this is a pretty soothing thing, activity that can
Mm-hmm.
build camaraderie, even if you're doing it, like if you have to connect virtually with your team via Zoom, like it's
Yes.
something they could do from the comfort of their homes.
Yes. And I want to add another component to this, just in terms of another way that educators could use this. If you are able to meet with your kiddos face to face, or you have some kiddos in there who are able to do literacy lanterns with their families at home, I would encourage you to, whether you're using the physical pumpkins themselves in your library or classroom space, or you're able to use photographs of the ones that are encouraged at home, I mean, that are created at home. They are a great jumping off point for what we often term as a shelf talker, meaning something you put on a shelf that sparks interest and sort of recommends a book. And so if I were doing it digitally, it'd be just so easy to add all these pictures of the literacy lanterns to like a Google slide deck, and you could have your kids record a quick audio talk of the book to just pin to that photo, and then suddenly you have an entire collection of shelf talkers, and they might be on a virtual shelf, but that's still a shelf that kids can peruse and browse, and then make some great choices in terms of their independent reading. If you're in a physical space, then the pumpkins themselves do that. You can put the
Mhm.
pumpkins on the shelves. If it's a classroom environment, then obviously your kiddos can talk to each other about their pumpkins. But if it's a school library, you can add just a little post-it note, or some other, if you want to get fancier with it, some other signage that says, I recommend this book. I'm Jennifer
Mhm.
and I recommend this book because. So the literacy and the sharing of the joy of reading doesn't end once you clean your brushes off.
Mhm.
Then the literacy lanterns can have a second life as a
Mhm.
way to help spread interest in those books and in reading.
Right. So we've mentioned the hashtag a couple times, and I guess whatever social media platform you use, it'd be a good way for you to post. I'm just gonna draw attention to the hashtag. Oh, there's a little bit of a glare from outside, but this
There
is
you
a
go.
free digital poster you can download off my website if you want to hang it up in your classroom. It has who knows how many, but lots of different literacy lanterns over the years that kids could do a guessing game with. I do have
Mm-hmm.
the characters at the bottom, but bradgustafson.com is where you could find that. But the real magic is you're creating and posting to hashtag literacy o lanterns. So we will
Mm-hmm.
be checking, and then educators around the world can be checking and just seeing what your kiddos are creating, what you try your hand out, and then we'll start posting ours in the, like I said, maybe even this afternoon, who knows, but I know it'll take
Yes.
me a little while to get through some of these.
I'll be revealing mine shortly, and I simply can't wait. I'm
I
very
can't wait
excited.
either. I can't wait
Woo!
either. Well, Jen, in my mind, when we were connecting for this show, I was picturing myself kind of painting and talking like Bob Ross, and it's now abundantly clear to me I am no Bob Ross. I could barely even open the paint while we were talking, Jen. So I apologize that I wasn't able to add any color as we were
Oh.
talking, but I guess maybe for those watching at home or even at school, I guess we might be painting at the exact same time.
That's right. And you know what? I think it's good for us to baby step this, Brad. We will save your happy little cloud debut to another show in the future. But for right now, of course, if you follow either of us on social media and you have questions about literacy o lanterns or anything else, you are welcome to reach out to us. We would love that. And of course, all of our show archives are located at bit.ly/read underscore this underscore now. And Brad, if they go to your blog and type in literacy o lanterns, they will find a plethora of resources there too to help them in this work. Is that right?
Yeah, they sure will. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Happy painting, and we will see you next week.
Happy painting. You got this, people. You got this.